In this video, we will show you how to replace your rear brakes, pads and rotors on this Jeep Grand Cherokee. You'll have pads and rotors on each side of your vehicle located behind your rear wheels. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing we have to do is safely raise and support the rear of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. Continuing from there, we're going to remove all 5 of our 22mm lug nuts in the wheel. To remove the brake caliper, we're going to remove our 2 18mm headed mounting bolts holding it in place. There's one out in the open down along the bottom here and one just above it. After you remove the first one, go ahead and start it back in just a couple threads, fully remove the second. Now we can remove the brake caliper, inspect the brake pads. If it looks like they're worn or damaged, you want to go ahead and do a brake job. Other than that, as far as the caliper, make sure it's not leaking. Assuming that looks good, you want to hang this aside, putting no pressure on your flex hose. Now we'll remove our rotor. Let's pay attention to our caliper. We're going to disassemble, clean, and inspect the caliper. To remove your outer clip, I'm just going to use some pliers. We'll gently start prying on this. Keep in mind it is under spring tension. There we are. A quick inspection of that. Our kit came with a brand new clip, so we'll be recycling this. Continuing on from there, we're going to start removing our 2 slider pins. Typically these are protected with some plastic covers. You just want to go ahead and pop those out of place. You can use a small prying device if needed. Inside this area, you're going to find a 7mm Allen-headed slider pin. Quick inspection of the slider pin. Repeat the process on the other side. Take hold of the bracket. You're going to want to clean and inspect the bracket itself. The areas that you want to clean and inspect would be right along the areas where your brake pads will sit. You can use a wire brush for this. After cleaning it, go ahead and set it aside. After cleaning the bracket as well as possible, we'll continue on to cleaning the slider pins. This should be a smooth surface all the way around. You can use a wire brush or wire wheel. That's what they should look like right there. We'll set these aside. Now we can start removing our brake pads from the caliper. The outer pad should pretty much just fall right out of place. Continuing from that, you have the inboard pad. The inboard pad actually has some metal clips that go up inside the caliper piston. For this, you can either pry it out of place or just gently squeeze along each side, pulling it out. There's those tabs. Quick inspection. We'll set the brake pads aside. Continuing from here, we have to push in our caliper piston until it's completely bottomed out. Inspect for any fluid leaks. Assuming it looks good, we'll prepare for our installation. Just use a caliper compression tool here. There's several different types. The area that will pay attention for leaks is right around this dust boot. If you see any fluid coming out of the dust boot, that means the internal seal is bad on the caliper and you have to replace it. This one's fine. Continuing from there, we have some high temperature caliper lubricant. We're going to add a tiny bit along the piston and along the backside of each of these two ears, essentially just in the areas that hit up against our brake pads This will help with vibration dampening and noise reduction overall. Let's start installing our brand new brake pads here. We're starting with the inboard pad. Those 3 clips, as you know, will slide up inside the piston of the caliper. Press it in, listen for a click, make sure it's secure. Now it's time for the outer brake pad. If you were to look in your brake pad kit, you're going to find that you have 2 outer brake pads. Each of them have a wear indicator. One will have a wear indicator on one side, the other will be on the opposite side. Compare it to your original brake pads. Make sure you're using the same outer brake pad. We'll take this and rest it right on the caliper here. Continuing on from this point, we have our caliper bracket. For this, we're just going to slide it over the ears on the brake pads. Once we have that properly aligned, it's time for each of our 2 slider pins. Before you install those, you want to make sure you lubricate them with high temperature caliper lubricant as well. When lubricating these, you want to make sure you lubricate the entire smooth shafted area, not necessarily the threaded area. Start sliding these into the caliper boots here. When starting these in, it's always a good idea to use a hand tool. We don't want to cross thread them in. After they're started, snug them up, torque them to 20 foot-pounds. Now, to be able to torque these, you're going to find that this wants to move around a lot on you. To help prevent it from wanting to spin, carefully use a pry bar or a prying device. Make your way through the slot on the caliper, being very careful for your brake pads. That'll hold it still while we torque this to 20 foot-pounds. Install your protective covers. At this point, we'll pay attention to the hub mating surface. This is where your brake rotor will sit. We want to make sure it's a clean mating surface. You can use a wire brush or a light sanding disc. After the surface is as clean as possible, we'll continue on with some anti-seize on the mating surface. When you go to install the rotor, we're going to slide it over the emergency brake shoes. We want to have a pre-adjustment on these, so when you slide it over, you want to make sure you don't have any resistance, but you do also want to be able to hear a light touch of the shoes on the inside of the rotor. If you have a hard time sliding it on, you want to de-adjust your adjuster, and if it sounds like it's too loose, it's not making any contact at all, you need to adjust it out a little bit, but make sure you don't have too much friction. Let's get our caliper in place here. With the caliper in position, we can start in our 2 caliper bracket bolts, snug them up, and then torque those to 89 foot-pounds. Now it's time for our metal clip. When we get this in position, we want to make sure we have it inside of the caliper and pressing along the outboard side of the caliper bracket. We have our ear along the outside. This one's making its way inside the caliper, as I mentioned. Press it in. Now we'll just go ahead and pivot this over. We're going to bring this other ear along the outside of the bracket. While holding pressure, we need to go ahead and press this inward. If you need to, you could lightly tap on it. One last quick inspection in this area. Let's reinstall our wheel. Start on all 5 of your 22mm lug nuts. We'll bottom them out. Get the wheel safely on the ground, and we can torque each of these to 130 foot-pounds. With the wheel back on the ground, we'll be torquing these to 130 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. Torqued. Okay friend, we finished the brakes on one side of our vehicle. The process for one side is the exact same thing as the other side. After you've completed that, pump up the brake pedal till it's nice and firm, check your brake fluid level, and take your vehicle for a road test. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.